My name is Bear Saragusa, and this is the Hunting Hound podcast presented by W Hunting Supply.
All right, Steffan Kichta.
Yes, sir.
Did I get that right? Good.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks for coming on. We've been talking about this for a while. I've been wanting to get you on. We started talking a while ago. I think what we started talking about, actually, we both being kind of in the houndsman community, I picked up on that you were posting some MMA stuff.
I was thinking, is it the houndsman? Was it the houndsman stuff? Was it the mushing stuff? Was it the MMA?
Right. Yeah.
One of our many things we have in common.
Exactly. Yeah. It was, I think, and I like looking back, I think it was the MMA stuff. I think you had posted your picks for that. I think it might have even been that the rematch between Daniel Cormier and Stipe for the heavyweight title.
Okay.
And
I don't remember if I got that one right or not. I would have probably said Stipe. So
yeah, I think we both agreed that it was Stipe, which was the betting. The bettors did not agree with us on that one, but he pulled it off. He did.
Yeah. I didn't get rich.
Neither did I, unfortunately. It seems like that's another thing we have in common, that all of our interests are things that tap our bank accounts and don't necessarily fill them up at all.
Yeah, but I'm not much of a gambling addict, but when I first downloaded, the gambling apps and whatnot, I told my wife, I said, I spend so much time studying MMA and podcasts and all that stuff. I said, we're leaving money on the table, like not betting on fights.
Right.
Which is what I thought getting into it. It turns out I was not leaving any money on the
table. I've thought about it several times. I've followed MMA for such a long time, and I've covered it myself as a journalist, and it's just like, I've managed to not do much betting so far. We'll see. I don't think I'll get into it now. If I didn't get into it when I was heavily into it, I don't think I'll get into the betting at this point. But it is an awful lot of fun to watch.
Yes, sir.
But one of the other things that intrigued me about you, and why one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast, among sort of many reasons, was that there's I end up talking to a lot of these guys, and a lot of them maybe got their start with Beagle, and then moved on to the big game hounds or something, or got their start with their uncle's coon hound and moved on to Beagles or there's usually like a 1 or 2 step process here. But, my history is kind of varied and sorted, and, yours is really, really interesting. I mean, you started out with hog dogs. Is that right?
I started out with pit bulls. Yeah.
Yeah.
Were those the opposite of every houndsman you've ever met?
Right. Were you using those for hogs? Like, was that the reason you got into the pit bulls, or was there a different reason for it?
It was like it was weight pulls, and that was big at the time. I don't know. I tried to be a hog hunter from Pennsylvania, making some drives down to South Carolina, that sort of thing. But just being a kid from Pittsburgh, not born and raised in a hunting home, born and raised, literally in downtown Pittsburgh. So I didn't even know anybody with hunting dogs. It wasn't even a thing where I came from.
Right.
So when I was in the service, I booked a pit bull pup because some friends from back home had them, and I started buying books on pit bulls and got fascinated with pedigrees and history, and that led me to, I don't know, wherever I'm at right now, I guess.
Right. So when you went pretty hard into the pit bulls, didn't you? I mean, you had a few of them.
I had a few, it was probably a time where I had 6 or 8 of them, but yeah, and a young family at the time. So the pit bulls led me to the American Bulldogs, and, we were doing some conformation shows, nothing very serious at all, really,
Sure. Were you hunting with those as well?
No. The American Bulldogs?
Yeah.
We were trying, but, being a being a hog hunter from Pennsylvania is kind of about the same as being a lion hunter from Pennsylvania. You know, it's not really a thing. You know, back then there were catch dog competitions and that, which kind of went away. You know, I don't know, that was 20 years ago or something like that. You know, quickest catch competitions and that sort of thing. But there was a world with the American Bulldogs back then. But
Sure.
yeah,
Sure.
I
Interesting.
actually even did some Schutzhund stuff. I trained with a Schutzhund club for a while. So
Oh, cool.
yeah.
Wow. I mean, for people who don't know what that is, that's some severely hardcore dog training.
Yeah.
The Schutz and stuff I mean, that's got a lot of aspects of sort of military police dog type training combined with sort of search and rescue stuff, if I'm not mistaken.
And a lot of bite work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Tracking, obedience, obedience, tracking, and bite work. But I never titled any dogs. I trained with the club on weekends, and always had some new young dog.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. And that you were doing that with the American Bulldogs?
With the American Bulldogs, yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. What got you into the hunting dogs? Like from the American Bulldogs, where did you go from there?
The American Bulldogs, the hog hunting thing, kind of, led me to I got more fascinated with, not to use the term blood and guts, but I wasn't as fascinated with the catch dogs as I was. Wait a minute, if you don't have a dog that can find these hogs, you can't catch them,
Right.
So I got a little bit more fascinated with the hounds than even the catch dogs, which that kind of led me to. So wait a minute, I could have these dogs, and I could actually not have to drive to South Carolina. I could hunt them 10 minutes from my house on raccoons. I mean, that's literally what I knew about hunting dogs growing up. Like, wait a minute, what do they do with these dogs now?
Right.
And I don't know. That was 20, 25 years ago, whatever.
Okay, so you went from the American Bulldogs to the Coon Hounds. What were you running? Were you running walkers, black and tans?
Tree and walkers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Everybody had plots for hogs back in them days. So I actually Pocahontas Kennels, Gene Walker. I booked a couple pups with him. Yep. And then I talking to local guys at work, they're like, oh, so-and-so is a big time coon hunter. A local Hall of Fame coon hunter here, Lee Logan, who I ended up hunting with a lot. They all had walkers. Around here, it was walker dogs. So I canceled the deposit I had on them plots and started coon hunting with walkers.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
How long did you do that?
I don't know. I guess off and on, probably, 10, 15 years, something like that.
Okay. Were you mainly just doing it for the experience, or were you out doing a little bit of competition?
Yeah, definitely competition. I did it the first 5 years or something. My kids were little. It was hard, coaching baseball, all this stuff. So I'm getting out once every week or two, and you ain't training any dogs like that, So
right.
I'm not going to pretend I was competing at a high level for 15 years, I just got into it slowly but surely over time. It just got more and more serious,
Sure.
Then I end up hooking up with Lone Pine Kennels, and that was kind of where things kind of got serious, and I started really doing good. They're Randy Smith and Tom Strang. They're winning world hunts. High level dogs, and I was handling for them. They kept putting good dogs in my hands, and as far as the coon hunting, that kind of changed everything for me, really.
That's something that I think is really underestimated in the, not just in competition world in terms of dogs in general, but just in terms of the training aspect of things is, you can have this idea when you're starting out, and I mean, you can hold on to that idea for a really long time when you're just working with your own stuff, that, hey, what I've got here is pretty good. And then that day comes where you get the chance to handle that super dog. And it's kind of that light bulb aha moment where it's like, oh, this is actually what a good dog looks like.
And I guess it all depends on your goals, right? I'm sure you've seen the same thing in mushing, whether you have Siberians, Alaskans, to Euros. Like, Randy Smith actually messaged me the other day. He said, "You need a walker." I said, "If I was looking to win night hunts, you were exactly who I would go to. I wouldn't get a dog from anywhere else. You know what I mean?"
Yeah.
But it just isn't what I'm trying to do right now. You know?
Right. Let's talk a little bit. I want to segue back a little bit, but at some point here. But let's talk a little bit about what are you doing now? Because you did the you did the coon hunting. You did the coon hunting for a bunch of years, and now what are you up to? Because
Yeah, I did coon hunts. You could pepper in there, you know, the Patterdales. I raised
I want to
Patterdales
talk to you about those guys. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of in between the American Bulldogs and coon hounds. There were some Patterdales there. You know, I would have a yard full of, maybe not a yard full, but I had 3 or 4 Patterdales out there, and maybe 2 or 3 coon hounds, or maybe 2 or 3 American Bulldogs. You know,
Mhm.
but yeah, I raised Patterdales there. The gang I was hooked up with American Bulldogs, pretty much all of us also had some Patterdales. So I did some hunting, digging terriers, that sort of thing for
Mhm.
a little while.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. I don't know a lot of people who have done that in the States. It's a real common thing over here. Most of the what we hunt over here, because we don't have the black bear, we don't have the uh the raccoons. Most of what we hunt with hounds over here is going to be fox, or maybe go to Sweden for a little while and hunt some bear and lynx for the 5 days that the lynx season lasts. But if you want to hunt with hounds, it's going to be hare or the foxes. And then if you're going to hunt fox, seriously, you're going to need an earth dog. You're going to need a den dog.
Yeah.
But I don't know a lot of people in the States that have done that. Was there a big community for it?
No, not at all.
No.
Not at all. There was a lot of people, there's probably 9 or 10 people that have Patterdales for every one person that digs. If you understand what I'm getting at,
Right.
that actually hunts
sure.
them.
Yep.
Everybody has Patterdales because they're cool, and you can watch them, bark at a caged coon, and it looks neat. So they're fascinating little dogs. But I don't think there ain't many people that hunt them, actually dig much, and for them, they're I don't know, a pretty tight knit kind of a I don't know. I don't know if I'd call them tight knit because they're always squabbling amongst one another, but they're a quiet community, should I say?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I can understand that. It's there've been some interesting discussions on some of the social media platforms recently about not just using the smaller terriers, but also blending in some of the Airedales. For some reason, that's kind of become a topic of conversation again recently. Was that ever anything you did? Did you ever have any of those? Did you ever blend any of that terrier stuff in with your hounds to see what would happen?
No, not at all. I kind of, no, I don't want to call myself a terrier purist or anything, but even you see a lot of the people with the Jags and stuff.
Yeah.
If you're going to do real terrier work to me is digging.
Yep.
You got a locating collar on and you're digging. So, the pitter pats and the crossing them, if they become too big to fit inside a Pennsylvania groundhog hole, to me, there's just no use for them,
Right. Yeah. I totally understand that. Yeah.
A lot about barn hunting and that, and they hunt in old barns and in hay and that, and that's an effective way to hunt, and manage those raccoons and pests or whatever that the farmers are dealing with. So, but I think for every giant terrier that's way too big to go on the ground, everybody just says, well, that would make a good barn dog.
Right.
So actually it's a bad terrier,
Right. Right. Huh. That's interesting. It seems like a lot of animals, a lot of the dog breeds are continuing to get bigger and bigger and bigger. We've got some of the beagles that I've seen over here. We had a beagle at work that was I work as a veterinary tech, and we had a beagle a couple of weeks ago that was over 50 pounds.
Oh wow!
And we're not talking a big engorged tick kind of a beagle. We're talking, this was a big boned, super tall. Norwegian Kennel Club registered purebred beagle.
Okay.
And it was just from a line of beagles that this guy is just breeding them big for some reason. And then it just becomes this kind of question for me in my head. It's like, well, a little bit like you said, not wanting to necessarily be a purist, but at the same time, it's like, well, why not just get a foxhound or a treeing walker? Why would you want to make the beagle into something that it's not?
Yeah. Well, all the beagles I ran here, it's all field trial stock, but most of the classes around here are 13-inch or 15-inch. What I ran mostly was PKC hunts. PKC hunts or the money hunts.
Mm-hmm.
They were up to 16 inches.
Okay.
Unfortunately, all the lines of dogs I had, I was always battling that 15-inch mark,
Okay. Is that right?
I like the money hunts more anyways. So it really wasn't a problem. You could hunt up to 16-inch, but yeah, I get what you're saying. I had what most people would call pretty big beagles.
What was it about that line that worked so well for you on the money hunts? Was it actually the length of their legs that they were able to move a little bit faster in some of the terrain, or what? Like, was their size a factor, and what was
the style
making them
of running.
successful? Okay. Yep.
Yeah, the style of running. I don't think it had anything to do with the size. I've been beat by little females. My partner I had in Beagles, he loved big males. He wanted to go to the hunts and cheat and try to say they were under 15 inches. He seemed to get off on that where I hated it. But
Right.
in the kennel, who's a buddy of mine, Dennis Kennedy, Big Meadows Beagles. He don't live far from here. He's a buddy of mine. I used to go up to Michigan and run Harrowit and that sort of thing. It was his line of dogs, was mostly what I had. And he won the world championship a couple times, and he's a good guy.
Okay, cool.
So I didn't seek them out.
Tell me a little bit about the Beagles, because you had Beagles kind of between the coon hounds and the big game hounds that you're running now. Is that right? Or was that kind of at the same time?
No, that was definitely when I quit the night hunts, I was coaching baseball a lot, and had two teenage boys and wrestling and baseball and all that. And it just got to where I could do the Beagles more than anything else. And, I enjoyed it. I had a partner, and we were trying to win a world hunt is what we were trying to do. So I don't know. I spent, I guess, 5 or 6 years. I kept a pack of 5 or 6 Beagles and traveled around mostly, like I said, mostly PKC hunts, mostly the money hunts.
Yep.
And that was, I enjoy it. I miss it. But then that would be the next topic. But
what
did that for a while.
What happened? Like, what made you walk away from the Beagles?
I went to Utah. I got invited on a trip to Utah to go run lion.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it caused some kind of midlife crisis. I said, it just ruined me. I just come home and I do love Beagles and I do plan to go back to it. But I mean, I'm like chasing these rabbits, which I love. I got the utmost respect for Beagles, but I was just like, I was chasing mountain lions like yesterday. Now I'm chasing these rabbits. And I was like, you know what? I'm in my 40s, but I'm physically fit enough, and it's still legal to chase big game in the US. So I better do this. If I'm going to do it, it's time to do it now. So
Sure.
I sold out of the Beagles and started trying to chase some bigger stuff again.
Cool. What type of dogs did you get when you went big game?
Plots.
Yeah, you went plots. Yep.
Yeah.
Did you go with the Pocahontas stuff? You said you'd ordered a couple of from Eugene.
From Pocahontas from Eugene. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I ended up that Baracho dog of mine. He's half Pocahontas, and he's off of the Logan dog, Bear Harrell's Logan dog. So I guess you would say somebody who was kind of a mentor to me in the beginning said, if you're going to be coon hunting these plots, make sure there's some coon blood in there. Make sure there's some locating ability. You might, with just straight bear dogs, you might lose some of that, and you might be frustrated as compared to a competition treeing walker,
Sure.
So that was the advice he gave me. And I got that Baracho dog, I guess that was 4 years ago. He's 4 years old now. So, and it just really clicked with that dog. I just really liked them. And I said, if this is what plots are like, I'm going to spend the rest of my life breeding and raising these dogs. Like I'm not saying he's that great a dog. I'm just saying he and I really clicked. So.
Right. And since then you've gotten some others. I guess you've got another young male and then 2 pups. Is that right?
I quickly found out that, as with every breed of dog, they're not all great,
Right.
All the treeing walkers ain't great. All the running walkers ain't great. All the beagles ain't great. So, I guess I've probably owned 10 or 8 or 10 or so plots now.
Mhm.
I had some I liked, some I had here on breeding deals that kind of, breedings or whatever didn't work out, that left. And then I had a few calls. I had a few that I didn't like at all. So
Right.
we're still here, as with every houndsman. We're all looking for that perfect hound, right?
Oh yeah, isn't that the truth? Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
cool. So have you
Speaking of-
gotten out after cats with your big game, like with your plots at this point, or are you focusing on sort of more locally available game?
I haven't had my hounds out west yet. No, I've been out there 3 times, but I've always flown out, so I didn't take any hounds with me. I just went out there for the experience. So, I've run some bobcats and some bears here in the east of the Mississippi, but I have not been out west with my own dogs yet. But that's the goal.
Cool.
That's what we're working towards.
Cool. What
And I was disappointed to hear about Dan. I understand 100% where you were coming from, but I was like, wait, what is he saying now? No, he's not saying Dan went elsewhere, man.
I'm still disappointed about Dan.
That being said, sorry, not to cut you off.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Plenty of times I look at, like my Baracho dog or whatever, who's, turned into a halfway decent bear dog, and I'm like, man, if he was in the hands of somebody, a real bear hunter, not an aspiring novice like myself, but who's in the hands of a real bear hunter, he might make a real dog, and I sometimes feel like it could be wasted talent. So I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. That's kind of the thing is there were a lot of factors to it. It's not just sort of a lack of confidence in my own abilities, although that was part of it, just a little bit of, just that feeling that I had something on my hands that I didn't have the depth of knowledge to reach even close to what his potential could be. But another part of it also is that, I've got 2 young boys. My son turned 10 today. My oldest son turned 10 today, and my youngest son is 7. And they weren't digging it. They were not having fun being out with me and the plot. I was having fun, but the plot, Dan, he's just such an intense dog where, it would, a morning hunt could turn into a sort of a 3-day ordeal to get him back. And that's a lot to ask these kids, and I was struggling based on my road access and things like that. I was struggling to set it up in a way where I could get into Dan and give him the backup that he needed but at the same time, take care of the kids. And I could see that I was kind of killing their enthusiasm for it. My youngest just flat out told me, he's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I realized that I needed to make a choice whether I was going to, really put the amount of time and effort into Dan that he needed to become, to reach even a little bit of his potential, to the detriment of my ability to hunt with my boys, or whether I, needed to send him to somebody who was going to be better equipped to, sort of tap his potential and do something else that was going to sort of, preserve my family's enthusiasm for this kind of a lifestyle.
Coming from a guy who made the mistake, I applaud you for your decision. And trust me, you made the right decision. I mean, I have one boy in Penn State and another boy in the Navy now.
Yep.
And I absolutely ruined them both.
Okay.
long,
Yeah.
even with the Beagles, which the Beagles is the perfect. It was kind of what made me get into it. They were young teenagers, and I got into it. And you can go out for a half hour and all that, but uh, you know, you just stay out in the freezing cold all day. And you know, we I realized at one point, I said to my wife, I said, I just realized, after I already ruined them, they don't have this sickness. They they can't sit there and watch a beagle run a rabbit past this road 100 times and be fascinated by it every time.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they're like, yeah, it's really cold, Dad. You know what I mean? We can go out for an hour or two, but to stand here and freeze for 8 hours, you got something wrong with you. So the minute I realized that they that I have a sickness that maybe they don't have was
Right.
a revelation. It was a good thing, probably. My
Oh
oldest,
gosh.
he likes the bird hunt. He loves the bird dogs, and my youngest boy, he still has a beagle here at the house. But
Oh, cool.
yeah, I
Yeah, that's exactly the conclusion that I came to. I had the opportunity once. Once I moved Dan on, I kind of had this period where the wind went a little bit out of my sails. I had a rough season this year. A lot of it I'm sure was boiled down to my own lack of experience and lack of sort of the depth of my bench, the depth of my toolbox. I had this buzz dog flake out on me on the second day of the season after being bitten in the face. And Vitby, who's come leaps and bounds, but she's never going to be a good dog. She's never going to be the dog that I'm going to want to, that I'm going to be happy to settle for.
Yeah.
But Dan was that dog. Like Dan was that dog that I got up in the morning and looked forward to getting out with, and, was excited about the future. And so when he left, it kind of took the bounce out of my bungee a little bit. So I took quite a bit of time. I had a lot of good dogs offered to me by some, really great people. And, those of you that offered me dogs, thank you so much for the offer. And it wasn't, I hope nobody was offended when I ended up saying no. The main thing was that I just ended up going in a totally different direction right this moment. I think at some point I'm going to need to I'm going to need to have a plot again. At some point I'm going to need to sort of pursue, keep going down the road that I started going down with Dan, with another dog. But at this point I've got a beagle pup that I picked up a couple weeks ago. He's 10,
that's awesome.
10 weeks
I
old.
saw that.
Yeah.
That's exciting. I think you can have so much fun with them. I really do.
I think
and
so.
You won't get any.
Yeah.
You won't get any flack from me for, taking a break and coming back to it later. Because as we've talked about, I've tried a lot of different games and been into them and out of them and into them and out of them a few times.
Yeah, which is really cool. I like that ability that to try your hand at a bunch of different stuff, because ultimately, my any strengths that I have as a hound trainer have certainly come from my time with the Huskies, and my time with the Hounds has made me a better Husky trainer.
Yeah.
So it's I feel like every time I try something new, the obedience with the Labrador, doing, some of the sheepdog stuff, or, blood trailing, whatever, every time I do something new, it sort of adds to that overall toolbox that I can apply to each dog that
Exactly.
comes. I only wish that I made mistakes one time and then never made them again. That would be nice. I find myself making the same stupid mistakes again and again and again.
No, to make it clear, I pretend to be a master, the jack of all trades, master of none. Let me be very clear. I'm a master because of the fact that I've switched around. I do have a lot of, experiences that I cherish, but I'm a master at none of this. I did not win a world hunt, with a coon hound. I did not win a world hunt with a beagle.
Right.
that being said, like you were talking about, I learned so much from, my mushing fascination as far as nutrition and care. And then
Sure.
I've messed around with bird dogs. I had an English setter. I had German wire hair, and I've, competed in a few trials with them. And what you
Cool.
learn from them about how the intricacies of the remote trainer, the shot caller. It's
Yeah.
like, wait, as houndsmen, we just put it on 18 and we just like, it's like, no, it's not. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
You just learn a lot.
Yeah. No, it's I've noticed that with some of the guys that I've gone out with in Sweden, where it's been like, yeah, a little bit like that, those disc jockeys in the morning on your drive to work. It's like, turn it up to 11 and rip the knob off. It's like, it gets a little nutty.
Yeah.
It's
We've come a long way. We've come a long way from the put a dog in a barrel with a deer hide and that whole game.
Right, roll it down a hill. Right,
it's gotten better, but there are some still some old school mentalities. A guy that I bear hunt with, I'm talking to him and he goes, "You can't have them prongs on your electric collars." He's like, "They're dangerous. If the dog gets hung up or something, it'll get choked out." And I'm like, man, it seems like, well, what if the dog, runs some trash or something like that? He goes, "Well, you just put it on 18, it'll still shock them." I said, "Well, what if you want to hit them for something less than that? What if it's not a bad deer chase headed across a highway?" He goes,
right.
"If you need to shock them, it's worth it to be on 18. I'm
Right.
like, no, buddy, there's not a dog trainer in the world that would tell you that's the way to do it.
Oh, absolutely not. And it is too funny. I've had it, how much things have changed just in like the dog mushing world since I started, in the mid 90s, late 90s, where, back then it was like your lead dogs, they were going to be big males. Your team dogs, they were going to be big males, and your wheel dogs were going to be big males. They needed to be burly, they needed to be furry, and you couldn't pet them too much because you'd make them soft.
Mm-hmm.
And they needed to eat meat, and that's it. Occasionally kibble if they needed a little bit extra, but it was like cornflakes quality kibble at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly never neutered a dog because that would kill its ability to work, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it was just like it went on and on and on and on. And finally some of these people came in from other sports, and that was the thing, is it took them coming in from other arenas where having
takes an outside eye.
Right. Yeah.
Takes an outside eye. Yeah.
Having somebody come in from the bird dog, from the bird dog world or from the Labrador world, where, having a, man eater in your yard that just wasn't going to happen. It's like you didn't show up to a trial with a dog that was going to bite the first person it got close to. That's the fastest way to get a DQ.
Yeah.
And suddenly you started having these teams show up that, they had some females up in lead, and they weren't super huge, and they weren't fighting all over the place. And, well, none of those dogs were bleeding. And it was like a lot of stuff that was like made people sort of start scratching their heads. Like, oh, maybe maybe there's a different way to do this.
Yeah.
And, it's really nice now, and you could bank on, it wasn't just like a maybe. You had to count on, if you were a handler or a veterinarian at one of these sled dog races in the 90s, I mean, you were going to get bitten.
Yeah.
There was no question, and now it's like, if a dog bites, not only is that dog off of that team, but that musher's most likely going to be disqualified.
Yeah. And when you hear somebody like Dallas articulate the process he went through in, okay, this is what used to work. This is what does work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I need to change. This is what would accentuate my strengths. Hearing somebody like Dallas walk you through that, articulate and walk you through that process, that's amazing.
It is amazing. Yeah. It's, and it's been really interesting watching these sort of eras of the sport, going from the you know, run them and the tough ones survive attitude to, then you got guys like Martin Boozer and Jeff King coming in and showing that, a meticulous, well-planned race kept within the dog's capabilities was actually going to get you there faster, and then you had these, people who fine-tuned that, people like Doug Swinley and Lance Mackey. And then, then you had, a guy like Dallas who was born into a mushing family where his grandfather was that old school guy, his father was that innovator, and here's this third generation kid, with basically 70 years of experience in a 25-year-old body. I mean, it's just like
he was bred and raised, and everything was aligned for him to be what he is, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and not taking anything away from the guy himself, he's a consummate competitor. I mean, he was an all-American wrestler, I think, before he was the dog musher, or he took a little bit of a
national. He was national champ if he didn't compete in a national, something like that.
I think he did. Yeah, I think he was super high level. When he took a break from dog mushing and then came back to dog mushing and just kind of applied the same discipline and grit that these wrestlers have to the dog mushing. And
And to take it back to hounds, I don't know how familiar you are with the night hunt, the coon hound competitions. Are you familiar with that game at all?
I'm not super familiar. I mean, like, I'm interested in it, but it's not anything I've ever participated in. So to say I'm familiar with it would be a lie, because no. But I know a little bit about it. But go ahead.
Along the same lines of what we're talking about, like the game in the last 10, I don't know, 8, 10, 12 years, it has just totally flipped on its head. It's just totally changed dramatically. Like back in my day, it was a quick strike dog and a dog that could tree that coon the fastest, and you would have to be real slick as a handler to pick out the tree voice and to call your dog, you call them struck, then you call them treed, then you walk in, and if there's a coon, you plus the dogs according to what order they came on that tree, which you're just listening to it all. Well, nowadays, if them dogs, when they turn them loose, they better go in 4 different directions. And if a dog trees a coon in this woods, these dogs are raised, trained, and even to this point now, I would say they're bred to be so independent, they don't even hear that dog. They can't even hear that dog. They just run in a totally separate direction. Even if that's the closest coon, it doesn't matter. And it's, I don't love it. That's not why I don't do it anymore, but the game has totally changed. It's just a different type of dog.
That sounds like it. That's amazing.
It's big money in it now, though.
Yeah. I mean, what was that? There was one, a year ago or something. That was the pro
sport hunt. I just saw, my buddies are in it. I just saw the other day, 36 dogs, $6,500 entry fee.
Yeah.
First place will pay $100,000.
That's unbelievable, man. Like, that's unbelievable. That is twice. That's more than twice, I think, at this point, what the Iditarod pays for the winning team of the Iditarod. And that's 16 dogs, or I guess they've dropped it down to 14. That's 14 dogs racing over 1,600 miles. And you walk away with half of that. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's something else, man.
That's awesome. I mean, and it's cool though that the sport and the lifestyle is still doing well enough to support purses like that. I think that's kind of cool.
Exactly. And I say this, having been around, I shouldn't say this because it could just come off wrong, but having been around the bird dog community, and this is probably my own insecurities more than anything else, there's a lot of money in the bird dog world. You might see a $80,000 truck and, $1,500 outfit and, $20,000 shotguns. And I always felt a little bit when you would say, oh, I'd raise coon hounds or this or that. This is a very general statement, but you might understand where I'm coming from. They could kind of look down there. Oh, coon hounds, huh? You
Oh,
know,
absolutely. Oh, I
kind
mean,
of look
it's
down their nose. You know what I mean? I'm not putting at all of them. I've met a lot of great bird dog people, but the community in general can look down a bit on a houndsman. I feel like, I'll
100%.
probably
I mean,
catch some flack over that statement, but it's like, do you know that this dog sold for $60,000? You know, he's
right,
competing for
exactly.
$100,000 this next weekend.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it is funny because, you can't, and I mean, it's a totally different animal there than it is here. I mean, here, a well-bred bird dog or well-bred English setter, we're talking that's going to be a 30,000 kroner pup, or sorry, yeah, like a 30,000 kroner. So what's that going to be? I mean, that's going to be a 5,000 kroner or $5,000, sorry, puppy,
Okay.
and like really highly functional championship level dogs here in the bird dog world. I mean, it's then you're talking the sort of $30,000, $40,000 type of price range.
Mm-hmm.
The hounds, that's just not going to be the case. I mean, the hounds here, there aren't the big money hunts here. You don't have anything like that over here. So the hounds are the bargain basement hunting dog over here. If you want a really good moose dog, that's going to cost you more than a really good foxhound or a really good treeing walker.
Yeah, and that's like you said, that's a good thing that the night hunts keep the value of the coonhound up high.
I think so.
Big,
Yeah, I think so.
I think the guides and the professional big game houndsmen, that there's some big money in those dogs.
For sure. Oh, for
But
sure. I mean,
yeah, if there's a way to make money, and it's a tool that will help you make money.
yeah, absolutely.
It helps.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. No, that's really interesting though. I think that's the case with most dog sports. The Alaskan Husky long distance guys look down on the Siberian Husky guys, and the Siberian Husky guys look down on the freight guys, and the sprint people look down on everybody. To sort of generalize unfairly, but it's everybody wants to kind of feel a little bit superior to their neighbor, I think. And I also think that there's a tendency for most people to feel a little bit inferior. It's sort of regardless of what they're doing.
Right?
Yeah, a little bit of insecurities there for sure.
Yeah. When I used to look at Beagles when I had coonhounds, I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. They run in a circle. Big, how
Right.
involved is it, guys? They run in a circle, But then when you're totally engulfed in the Beagles, you're like, well, what kind of line is it running? And how far is it off the line? And what kind of mouth does it have? And we're timing
Right.
the distance between the first bark and when is the rabbit moving? Like, talk about making rocket science out of running rabbits. And you becoming completely engulfed in it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's one of the things I like, and it sounds like you kind of have that you have a similar personality to me, where I will, if I get interested in something, I don't just sort of vaguely keep track of it. I go sort of whole hog and get fully into the small details. That's where I really start enjoying something, is when I know enough about it to be able to start looking at those minute details that will make the difference between high performance and a lower performing dog, MMA competitor, whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes a lot of this fun for me anyway, is the fine tuning. As you get into that fine tuning aspect of training, that's when I really start having fun with it.
Yeah. And I've tried to, like we've talked about before, I try to apply some of the principles I've learned just from just watching mushing from a distance, as a spectator, but I still take things from it. And the attention to detail, I just envy, when you hear Dallas talking about his diet and, the massage massaging dogs, and there might be some bear hunters out there after a good hard bear race. They massage them all before they put them in the box, but I haven't met any. And I try to apply some of those same principles. Try to bring that stuff over.
Sure, yeah. I mean, and that's something that I'm very thankful for. And just in terms of my hounds, I don't have a lot of strengths as a hound trainer, but one of the things that has really, really, really benefited me was my time with the sled dogs, specifically because of the rest recovery cycles, the nutrition aspect of things, and the strength and conditioning aspect of things. Because my dogs are still going to be good to go on day 3 and 4, because I apply all of the same things to my hunting dogs that I did to my huskies. And that goes all the way from not just when I get a dog on my property, but it factors into which dogs I choose. I will choose a well-built, a hound that's well-built, but doesn't have the nice papers over a very well-papered dog that I don't like the build on. I'll, like, no question, will choose the better built dog.
And you taught me a few things. You mentioned a few things about Baracho that I had never considered conformation wise. And it's something I learned from the Beagles. We talk about jumping around, playing different games. In the coonhound world, this dog's a show champion. This dog did this on the bench. I don't care. I care about treeing coons, Yep. And the coonhound, might travel 1.5 miles in a night, tree 3 or 4 coons. You probably ain't going to travel more than 2 miles. And they can just get over with conformation flaws. Where I start running Beagles, and I'm running a Beagle with 8-inch legs, and he's doing somewhere between 10 and 15 up to 20 miles, maybe 20 plus miles in a day. If there's a problem on his pasterns, if he's turned out east, west, something like that, or he's cowhawk, they just break down, and 100%. It's like, oh, I never considered this. I never considered this in the coonhounds.
Yeah. I mean, it's 100%. Yeah. It's a fascinating aspect of dogs, working dogs, that it is sort of very frustrating to me, because it's something I want to talk about, but means so little to so many of the people that I talk to that it's like not even worth bringing up.
Well, since you say you like talking about it, I'll bring up a point that you said to me that I never considered. Okay. I coming from the Bulldogs, when I first got into coonhounds or maybe plots, a Bulldog guy's going to like a big muscled up, blocky looking dog, big blocky head, and just common sense, and owning some tree or running walkers, running coyotes and that sort of thing. That big muscled up blocky dog, it's for the most case not going to hold up, and that doesn't take too much common sense. But I was like, I still like a dog with a nice big blocky head, like a plot with a big head like that. And you were like, you know what, Baracho has the perfect head, because you don't want that. You don't want all that weight on the front end. Right. I was like, wow, never. It took you telling me that I never even heard anybody mention that before.
Right. Well, that's really interesting, because I mean, that was something that I learned really early on, with the sled dogs, is that, when you had these like Malamute dogs and these dogs that had, Inuit dogs bred into them, when the rest of the body is massive enough that it matches the head, if everything is in proportion, then it's okay. But when you started breeding in these racier Alaskan Huskies, but you wanted to hold on to some of the fur, so you were breeding in kind of these older dogs into these new racier Alaskan Huskies, you had to be really, really careful, because you could get these super athletic dogs that just looked amazing, but they still had that kind of pumpkin head. And, they just couldn't do it. They would just bust down their front ends. And, they may be super, super high performing dogs for the first 6 years of their life, but then, they may retire early. And that's always been something that's been important to me in my breeding programs, has been not just a dog's, ability to perform at a very high level, but how long can they perform at a high level?
Mm-hmm.
Longevity has been something that I've paid a lot of attention to.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have the longevity in the hound sport to have been able to do it much, so far, but
Mm-hmm.
with the sled dogs, I prefer to have a dog that doesn't really start to slow down until it's, 8.5, 9, and preferably won't retire until they're 11 or 12.
Mm-hmm.
That's my ideal. It doesn't always happen. You're always going to have those, the millions of steps that they're taking in the course of their lifetime. You're always going to have those, dogs that step into a hole or whatever that, they're going to have career ending injuries, but you kind of try to avoid those, the dogs that, without any mechanism for injury are just always injured. Like those dogs I
Yeah.
always took out of my breeding program because I don't, I don't want them. I don't want them around. And it was one of the reasons I chose to get Dan when I got him was that I saw pictures of his mom, and he sent me some videos of his mom running along side a bike, and she just moved so well and
Mm-hmm.
was so well put together that I rolled the dice. I never figured out who the father was. With Dan, I've got a pretty good idea, but took the chance, and Dan is as well built a dog as I've come across in any sport. And Vitby is the same. This American foxhound I have is the running walker I have is the same.
Yeah.
Whereas Buzz is not. Buzz is tall. He's too tall in relation to the length of his spine, and he's got that big pumpkin head and very, very straight pasterns. And that's enough. That's enough so that he has, if I run him by himself, I can still run him because of the conditioning and the nutrition. I can still run him 4 or 5 days in a row without it being any major issue for him. But then that's going to have to be at his pace. If I run
Yeah.
him with another dog that he tries to keep up with, even for half a day, I can guarantee you he's going to be lame by the end of that day.
That's something I'm learning and something I'm anxious to see here this season. I like the way Baracho looks more than a few people have told me, oh, he's put together right. I've seen him. I haven't ran him with 10 different packs of bear dogs, but I've ran him with a few different packs of bear dogs now. And he's going to be towards the front in the beginning of the race, for at least an hour or two, I don't know if it's youthful exuberance, he goes pretty hard in the beginning of the race, so, whether he'll continue to hold that all day long, I guess that's to be seen. But this young dog, this Tigre dog I have now, I mean, Baracho just looks like a bodybuilder trying to keep up with a marathon runner when I rode him,
Okay.
He's only a year old now, so this will be his first real season on bear here. But I mean, he just moves. I mean, to me, he's not good to look at. He's awful to look at. He kind of looks like a brindle running walker. I don't care for much about the way he looks, but he just moves so much easier than Baracho. So,
Right.
And he seems that he has the grit, the running to catch mentality.
Mm-hmm.
But whether we'll have the nose or not to put those attributes to use, I'm really anxious to see. I'm excited about this season coming up here.
That's really cool. That it's so exciting when you've got some young stuff coming up. It's awfully comfortable to have that good dog that you just know you can go out and get it done with. But there's something just so, electrifying about having that younger dog that you're excited about. Because you've also got a couple of pups there that look really nice. I was looking at pictures of them the other day. They're turning out really to be good looking dogs.
Yeah. They're coming along nice. They're a pain, man. And I didn't realize what time of year I was getting them. When I had one coming, it was kind of a replacement for a dog I didn't really care for.
Mm-hmm.
So the guy said, I'll replace her with another pup delivered to your house. I said, well, I don't expect a guarantee with a pup, but he goes, I'll tell you what, I'm going to send you 2. I'm like, well, okay. Not realizing that it was mid-January and I couldn't really put them out in the kennel. So they spent, the first 2 months in the house, and
Right.
it was a lot of work. If I could do it over again, it's nice now that, they're about ready to get started, but it's been a rough couple months. You know, I probably have 1 or 2 dogs more than I need right now at the house. So
Right.
yeah, but I'm excited to see what becomes of them.
That's exciting. Yeah, but you know, I guess the ideal though is that they're going to be those few months older when the season starts.
Yeah,
You know, so I
exactly.
guess that's going to be the trade-off. You know, I was real happy with this Beagle pup, this Mike pup that I've got now. You know, he was born, you know, he's 10 weeks old now. And you know, I think that's really nice. I see a lot of these other litters that are being done now. You know, the females are being bred now. It's going to be kind of late in the season. You know, they're gonna even by the tail end of the season, they're still going to be just a little bit too young. You know, whereas Mike, I
That's
think,
something
is
I
going to
never
be
really. I hear a lot of people talk about that, but here in PA, it's not something I never gave much thought to, because of the fact that we can train dogs in PA year round. So there's no closed season for what you call, in quotes, dog training. So you can run coon 365 days a year. You can run rabbits 365 days a year. So there are times during the year where conditions are better. And yeah, it's great to have when coon's harvest season opens up in the fall, it's great to have a, 10, 11, 1-year-old dog.
Sure.
10, 11 month old, 1-year-old dog that time of season. But I guess we're a little bit lucky in the fact that we can train dogs pretty much year round. So
yeah, that is sweet. Yeah, we've got our hare season is from October to February, and the roe deer season, because we're allowed to run beagles on roe deer because they're under 41 centimeters, so 16 inches at the shoulder.
Okay.
So like this Mike pup, I'm gonna try to get him on roe deer. I would prefer that to the hare. If he just becomes a straight hare dog, that's not going to bother me at all. But we have so many roe deer around here at this point that I would love to. And you know, I try to take at least one a year, every year.
Okay.
But I would prefer to be doing it with a dog than, sitting in a stand waiting for it.
Well, the good thing about my son's beagle is he also prefers deer over rabbits. Unfortunately, that's never what I'm after, and we're not allowed to run deer here in PA. But yeah, there's a good for Buddy and Jason. There's a good train wreck story with that guy.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
What happened?
Oh, I this was I guess this would have been last. Yeah, I guess this would have been last winter. It was really Barachos, maybe 2 or 3, and I had this pipe dream of maybe one day catching a bobcat, which I haven't caught any yet, but I'm getting closer to getting it done. But I drive all the way up to the national forest. I got my son's beagle and a couple coyote hound pups, a couple running walker pups, and Baracho. Well, I pull off the road and I find the prettiest cat track I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it just crossed the road. It's snowing right then. I know how hot this track is. I put him down. I'm like, I've been waiting for this moment for 3 years since, or, whatever, 2 or 3 years I've had this plot. This is the moment I've been waiting for.
Sure.
This is getting ready to happen, So I dump him on this cat track. Next thing I know, I look down. He's like 700 yards, quarter mile in there, something like that. I'm like, holy heck, he's moving this. So I'm like, I'm going to put my boots on. I'm gonna let these pups out, this beagle and these couple running walker pups out. I mean, within 30 seconds before I could get my boot tied, they started a deer and they're just gone.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, no collars on none of them because I was just letting them empty out, I guess Baracho put that cat in some rock ledges up there because the race just switched off like a switch and he just come back out to the truck. But I wanted to hike in there and try to put him back on it or see what went on.
Right. Yeah.
And I literally spent the next week trying to catch. I got the running walkers caught, but yeah, it's another whole story about my son's dog spent a week up there in the national forest with us trying to catch him and people trying to help us catch him. And that's 2 hours from my house. So
this was the beagle.
That was the beagle. Yeah. I mean, my son got lost up there
Oh, no.
in a snowstorm with Crocs on. But one day looking for them. We had some snowmobilers help us kind of run them down. And yeah,
Oh
quite
man.
but he bought himself a home here for a little while because you got to respect that little guy. He spent a week up there in the national forest in February in the snow.
And lived to tell the tale. Wow, that's amazing.
Oh man, yeah, he
That's
must have got terrorized by coyotes though, because for the next maybe 6 months, if you would come across if he would come across any coyote scent, I mean, he would take off running a half mile away, just looking over his shoulder, screaming in terror.
oh,
Just
okay.
the
Yeah.
slightest hint of coyote scent. So,
Sure.
I mean, they must have terrorized them, man.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Anyways.
beagles, but beagles are tough, man. That's the funny thing. It's like I've had a lot of different dogs, a lot of different types of dogs in my life. And a good tough Alaskan Husky, that's a hard dog to beat. But Dan the Plot was just, man, he was tougher than boot leather. It was amazingly tough dog. But these beagles too, though, it's
They don't get the credit they deserve.
They don't. They're these, they do some amazing things, and they're like a third the size of these other dogs. And they're not. What impresses me with the beagles is it's not like some of these terriers where I feel like what's happened is they're super tough, but it's because they've had this the switch, this self-preservation mechanism just bred totally out of them.
Yeah.
They're tough because they're insane.
Yeah. Yeah, I got you. You being an MMA fan. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's just like, but the beagles, they're tough because they want to be. They're tough because they've got the heart. And that's always fascinated me. I grew up with a beagle, and I didn't hunt her or anything like that, but she, I taught that dog to do everything. She would herd cows for, and that dog was the best, and she was tough as heck. I don't think beagles get the respect that they need. I was talking to, it always fascinates me watching and listening to the podcasts that like Cleve and Becky Dwyer do, because they do they've bred some beagle into their stuff, and it's just, they've got nothing but good stuff to say about the beagles. It's really, I think they're an underestimated dog.
100%. The terrain, the brush they go through,
Yeah.
The mileage. I always say, I went from running rabbits to running bear, and I mean, my beagles put more miles on than a lot of bear dogs do.
Oh, sure.
Like you said, a third of the size. I mean, it's easy to, you can just drop the tailgate, sit down on the tailgate, and put the miles on a rabbit dog.
Yeah, but again, I think that a lot of that can boil down to how you train them, how you condition them. A beagle is not gonna. The nice thing about a beagle is that their top speed is not going to be high enough to really beat themselves up. Like a big hound, their top speed, if they really go nuts, they can do a lot of damage to themselves fairly quickly.
Yeah.
But the beagle, they're never going to be moving fast enough to be busting legs and, dislocating hips and things like that,
I got you. I see what you're saying. Yeah. We would go up to Michigan and run snowshoe hare up there in Michigan. We would put 100 miles on the dogs in a week,
Oh, I'll bet you would. Yeah.
We'd get up there 80, 90 miles, running them, half a day. We'd usually run 2 different packs, run 1 mile or 1 pack before lunch and the other pack after lunch. But I've never put 100 miles on a bear dog. I'm sure guys put plenty more than that. I don't pretend to be a bear hunter or have very much experience at it, but
no, but
100 miles on a week is a lot for a dog.
It is a lot for a dog. Yeah. I mean, it is a lot for a dog. You've got to, apart from, realistically in terms of just overall endurance type stuff, and you've kind of got to get into the dog mushing world before you're starting to look at more distance put on a dog in a week, than is put on a really active pack of beagles or, even, these bear dogs, cat dogs, it's
the running walker guys. I say that saying that the running walker guys that run coyotes around here.
Mhm.
And even, I mean, you can put some miles on a dog. Them guys put some miles on. They would probably laugh at 100. As I was saying that, I was thinking, well, you know what? Any of my coyote hound buddies would probably laugh at me because they can have some 40, 50-mile days. You could have 4 or 5 of them in a week during the wintertime, So
Sure.
they could probably put 200 miles on, I guess.
Well, it's a totally different animal though, right?
Yeah.
It's like with the Huskies, yes, they're doing, I've had 300 or 400-mile weeks before, in training, where that's not been, that it's starting to get to up there in training intensity, but it's not that bad.
Okay.
But the thing is that you're not letting the dogs do whatever they want. They're on trails. They're all tied together. They're being kept in line. You're not letting them go as fast as they want to. You're breaking the speed down. You're keeping them kind of within that aerobic threshold that's going to make it so that they're able to keep that pace for the amount of time that you're going to be training, right? So with the hounds, you don't have that. So they're going to be dictating their own speed. So, and they're going to do what most dogs do, which is just go balls to the wall until they hit until they literally hit a wall.
And that was another thing where I tried to apply the, I was messing around with the dogs are hydrated stuff. The,
Yep.
And, I'm like, if Arlie Reynolds tells you it helps, well, then you listen to Arlie Reynolds, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But it's just, it's so hard, the difference between mushing and, the bear dogs or any of the hounds. It's so hard to control the variables, like you're not going to run your sled dogs a mile and a half one day. And then the next day, 24,
Right.
which might happen on a bear race, it's
Sure.
like no musher would ever do that, and then do you have access to that? I would like, okay, let me get them, as soon as I get them caught up, I get them back to the truck, I'm going to feed them this, bowl of water I have specially prepared, but they've been laying in the creek now overheated and their bellies are just blowed up from all the creek water they drank, and I'm like, man, this is a little more difficult than I wouldn't call it a failed experiment, but it was a little more difficult.
Right.
The
But I mean,
variables.
that's a great point though, is that, we as mushers, we have total control over the dogs at all times. At all times, they're attached to us basically.
Yeah.
It's not like with the hounds. And that was something that I really struggled with when I got into it, was just learning sort of that ability to let go. It was really sort of this anxious feeling for me when they got out of my sight, because it was just like, as a dog musher, you were in serious trouble. If you're out there and you don't see your team, you're screwed.
Yeah.
So like making that adjustment to with the hounds, where it was like, where it was okay. I don't see them, but that's okay. I've got this GPS thing. This is all going to be okay. But, more than that, we also had the ability they didn't eat unless we fed them. They didn't drink unless we gave them water, something to drink. We had total control over what was going in to those animals, and which in turn gave us control of their output to a very large degree. And, that is something that as houndsmen, we don't have. You can have this perfect diet of just that you've got all planned out with, dogs are hydrated and, the best kibble available and all of these things, and that they should get that within 20 minutes of being done of, blah, 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 blah. The reality of it is that, by the time you get back to the truck, exactly, by the time you get back to the truck, their guts are going to be full of muddy water and, a half rotten deer carcass. Your perfect nutrition and plan is out the window.
A testament to their toughness again.
Absolutely.
And they're not running, like you said, they're not running on a trail. They're running through. I don't know if you had that mountain laurel. Somebody was making fun of me online the other day because I'm an idiot. Don't know the difference between mountain laurel and what is it, rhododendron?
Yeah.
It's the vegetation they have down there in West Virginia that these bears go through. And just watching a pack of bear dogs go through it, it's just unbelievable. It's just, I mean, the bang, what they must be banging off of every brush and every rock and it's just the toughness just it just fascinates me. It's
It is.
unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. It is
It's
unbelievable.
why I
And
do.
it's such a
It's
more
why we
dynamic.
do what we do.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a more dynamic, the hounds they're required to move in a much more dynamic way than the huskies are. The huskies, you want them to settle into that endless trot, that where they just keep the same motion over and over and over again for thousands of miles is kind of what you're going for. But with the hounds, they're running over such uneven terrain and, with obstacles and all of this different stuff, it is a totally different, uh, it's a totally different physical challenge, I think, for the hounds than it is for the huskies. The huskies are able to do those long distance that they do because it's controlled. I don't think it's reasonable to compare necessarily the two specifically. I don't think I don't think it's comparing. I don't think it's comparing apples to apples, but I don't totally think it's comparing apples to oranges either. I think there are a lot of similarities, but maybe not as many as some people think, and not as few as other people think. Maybe.
No, I know what you're saying. I agreed.
Yep. What kind of kibble are you feeding your guys, since we're talking about nutrition and that kind of thing?
So I did that big thing, the chart and all the kilocalories per cup, and translated over to dollars, and just trying to find the best bargain. And a lot of people messaged me. I couldn't believe the traction I got online, and people were under the fallacy that I was some kind of dog food expert, that I knew anything about it. So I was getting so many messages like, I don't know what you're saying, but what should I feed? And I'm like, what I learned from this is that I don't know. I think it was kind of a failed research project, because what I found out, the best kilocalories per cup per dollar foods were just lower quality foods. The analogy I come up with is, you can get a lot of calories for a little bit of money at McDonald's.
Right.
I wouldn't recommend you eat that every day. So that being said, I'm feeding Diamond right now. Diamond High Energy, the maroon and green bag.
Sure.
It's the cheapest food I've fed in a long time. The prices of dog feed I've always fed around that $1 per pound.
Yeah.
I don't know, what your experiences were in Maine. I'm sorry, if you had Diamond dog food, or you have the same brands over there.
Back then, I don't know what a lot of the brands were being used. We had a couple things that we had access to at that point. One of them was a old food that I don't even think they make anymore, called Casco.
Yeah, I used to feed Casco, the purple and
yeah, exactly. Yep, that's what I started feeding, and then I made the switch later on to something called Blackwoods, which was
Blackwoods.
Yeah, it was specifically a dog mushing formulated dog food.
Okay.
So it was something that Mitch Seavey fed way back when.
Okay.
And then after that, I made I guess the last thing I was feeding before we moved was Inukshuk.
Yeah.
And
I looked into that. If money was not an issue, I would probably feed that Inukshuk.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if you can afford to go and buy, pallets at a time and get that sort of big distributor kind of prices for it, then it might make sense. But, for that to make sense, you really realistically should be feeding, 20 dogs. Otherwise it's going to start going rancid. Because that is the downside to some of these super high energy foods, is that, you do have that really high fat content that, does make it so that, especially in some of the, warmer climates, it's going to start to get pretty harsh.
Yeah.
After, not too long.
Yeah.
But,
to answer your question, I'm on that Diamond High Energy, and it's the dog food prices have just went crazy around here, like everything else. I'm not the only one complaining about that. So I was like feeding 7-8 dogs here. What is that now? I have it wrote down at like 70 cents a pound.
Okay. Yep.
The The coats don't look great. Really, other than that, I have no other complaints. No skin issues, no ear issues. It does have corn in it. You know, I've always been a diamond guy. I've never really had any problems with their recalls and all that stuff. I know some people panic about, but
that's
I'm
going to
on this
happen
for
to
now.
pretty much every dog food producer. Sooner or later, that's going to happen eventually.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now that's interesting. So before I think we're gonna start thinking about wrapping this up here. We're going for an hour and a half. That's one of the things I love about this. I just talked to Clint Buckwalter about this a couple days ago, where it's just like the time flies talking dogs. Like I feel like we've been sitting here for just a few minutes. We've actually been sitting here for an hour and a half just talking dogs.
Yeah,
I love it.
Probably hardly covered Hounds. We probably talked more about MMA and mushing.
Yeah. So, but before we go, I'm going to go ahead and put a big old bullseye on your back and ask you the hard question.
Let's hear it.
All right. You've run treeing walkers. You have plots. Which breed has the better feet?
Feet?
The feet. Which has the tougher feet? Because this is a big discussion over here that I am deeply unpopular for my opinion, and I'm interested to hear. I'm not going to tell you what it is until you've told me what your thoughts are on it.
Oh man, I can honestly say, I wish I could tell you I've ran them more till I had bad problems. I've never had a problem with a tree dog's feet.
Really? Okay.
I've run some pads off of coyote Hounds, and I've run some pads off of Beagles, but I have not had trouble with plots or treeing walkers' feet.
Gotcha. Cool. Okay,
Yeah.
that is not the answer I expected. So that's cool.
Yeah, that just goes to show I haven't run them enough, I guess.
No, it's it's one of the things I think over here is that we've got very specific lines. We don't have all of these different lines of walkers and plots over here that we would have in the States, that are going to have all of these different qualities. So with the risk of alienating some of my walker listeners, some of the walkers that are over here, not all of them, some of them have really bad feet.
Okay. And
So
as you're talking, I'm thinking about it more, just, prefacing why didn't I have an answer for your question? If you're talking about treeing walkers and plots running on coon and or bear, really ain't running them that much when the snow's bad. In the terrain here in PA, it's not nasty rock. It's not lava rock like they got out west. If you're running coyotes and fox, and you're running on that bad snow, I mean, you just tear dogs' feet to pieces. But the bear are hibernating for the most part. The coon aren't moving great when you got deep snow. So
sure. No, that makes sense. I think, it's just it's a conditions question. And I that is the issue. Part of the issue we have is, it's freaking Norway in late fall. It's going to be icy. It's going to be snowy. It's going to be crunchy. It's going to be gross. So, and my experience has been talking to people, both what I've experienced myself and talking to people, take my limited experience with a grain of salt, but has been that the plots have pretty solid feet compared to some of the walkers that I've run with anyway. They've saying nothing about the quality of the dog overall, but just feet.
Well, that's what I thought you were getting at when you were saying what's between the treeing walkers and the plots. I'm like, you ain't setting me up like that, Bear. You better go. I made a post a few months ago. I had a frustrating night. I had, Baracha was hurt with a bad foot. Speaking of the devil, but Baracha was hurt with a bad foot, and I had a bad night with the young dogs. And I put a post about being frustrated about the plots. And man, you would think I was telling other people their dogs were bad. I was just saying mine were bad,
It's people are funny, man. Like when you get a little bit out on social media, or you put yourself out there some way, whether it's in a podcast or social media or whatever, it gives people this feeling that they know you, that they have some kind of a relationship to you.
Yeah.
And that always cracks me up because I'll get feedback on stuff that I do from people that I've never even talked to. Like I have no idea who they are. Like when I bought Dan, here in Norway, for the most part, plots are reckoned to be good on lynx and they're good on bears. That's it. Like if you want a fox dog, there's a bunch of different other dogs you can get.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got messages, people coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
Being like, well, I don't know how I feel about this, Barry. It's like, I don't know if I care.
The good thing about social media is I control the narrative and you control the narrative. You know what I mean? Like if you're the person if you like to argue, then it's the place for it. Me personally, I don't. So I don't even engage at all.
Neither do I.
I mean, not that I don't want to hear your opinion. I like the opposing opinions, but if what you're looking to do is just argue, block, delete, it's not my thing, buddy. I'm not that guy.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. All right, Steffan, I really appreciate this. This was it was a lot. I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
And I think we've scratched the surface of some of what I wanted to talk to you about. So we may, I may start bugging you to do another one of these before too very long.
As long as I don't listen to it, because I've done a few and I can't stand the sound of my own voice. It goes right through me. So
I feel the same way as something I said to Jason early on. It was like, I can't understand that anybody wants to listen to my voice for an hour. Like, gosh, how annoying.
Somebody videoed me something the other day and I was playing it with my wife and I said, how are you even married to a guy that sounds like that? Listen to like this condescending tone. It's just awful, man. I don't know. I don't think that way, but when I hear it come out of my mouth, that's what it sounds like to me. So
right.
Yeah, I hear you.
All right, buddy.
Thanks, Bear.
I appreciate it, man.
Thank you, man. Do a good job on here, man.
I appreciate that a lot, and we'll keep in touch.
Sounds good.
All right, see ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Man, I love that sound.